Okay.
Oh, okay. So, welcome to another session of Web of Wonder on today, May 14th at noon here, at least on the East Coast of the U.S. I wanted to sort of do a catch-up session because of a number of things have been changing and some people have come in late and so I'm sort of doing this session as a catch-up. What I want to cover today is there's a new navigating the environment video and some changes I've made to the environment. The whole program operations segment has been added that I want to spend a few minutes and talk about. I want to talk about where the web session videos are now located because they've been moved. Talk about the web Q&A calendar that we've installed and a new survey feature that just got stuck in there yesterday. And then review the content for this particular segment and then do a Q&A session. So as indicated, there's a new Navigating the Environment for version 4 video that just got installed a couple of days ago. It's probably the best one that I've done so far, but then of course I'm a little bit biased. But it's more comprehensive than the ones have been in the past. And I finally, on the recommendations of other people, I actually logged into Kumu as an observer so that the screens will look the way everyone else will see them when they access it, so that the menu bar down at the bottom has only got the same set of buttons that people have, and it's not showing other things on the screen that you won't see. And the other thing that I just added the other day is I went through the sequences and I actually put arrows on the paths so that they're easier to follow. In other words, easier to follow. The dashed lines are optional. You can look at them if you want to. And for those places where there are things that you need to sort of go to and come back, then it's a double arrow so that you come down here, you go to this one, and then you come back, and then you go this way, and that's why it's got double arrows on it. So some people had commented about they were getting confused about which way to go here and there, so I added that. The end of last week, you can interrupt me and type in a, hi Dave, type in a question anytime you want to. Dave, I turned your mic on. If you want to mute it on your end unless you want to ask a question.
Okay.
So am I getting a, okay. Toward the end of last week, somebody commented that this environment was a lot like jumping off a cliff and trying to figure out how to build a parachute on the way down. And they weren't commenting about the content of the environment as much as they were commenting about all of the things that had gotten wired together to make this work that they were completely unfamiliar with. So over the weekend, I went ahead and installed or built this piece called Program Operation, which is a segment that specifically just talks about all the pieces that got implemented to make the environment work, to make all of the pieces work, so that it talks about Kumu and it talks about the YouTube videos and the webinar and the calendar and Insight Maker and the LinkedIn group, subgroup and Ego and all of these pieces. So for each one of them, there's a description and a video that talks about why that piece was selected and why it's being used. And the session videos, I was going to put them on the summary element for each one of the threads, though I found out that it would be easier for people to find them if I put them on the label for the segment itself, because if you're looking at the profile page for the entire map, that's what you first get when you click on this label is, oh, maybe you don't. Wait a minute. If I click on this, okay, I get the program operation. If I go back here and click on Web of Wonder, I get that label, and there's the 2 videos from there before, and here's the 1 video that was done the other day for systems thinking. So I put them there because I think they'll be easier for people to find. And then because this was turned into a recurring program as opposed to a fixed 12-week schedule, which was ludicrous, thinking that a person could actually, in their dealing with their ongoing changing priorities and schedules, meet this schedule on a firm fixed basis was just insane. So we turned it into a proceed at your own pace or your own risk program. Though I'm going to try and schedule all of these sessions when they were initially scheduled and add additional ones when people indicate that they're needed, because there's no way I can figure out when a particular session ought to happen. So while this is the schedule that appears here, it also is put into a calendar format so that you can look at this calendar to see when the sessions are scheduled, and every time a new session is scheduled, it will appear on this calendar and it will appear in this sequence of stuff also. Now, as I said, I can't figure out when I ought to schedule these, so as participants go through segments and say, I'm ready for a session on such and such, well, they can go ahead and use this survey and indicate what they're in a position to want a session on, and when there are enough indicators for a particular session, well, then I'll schedule one. And I don't even know what times that they ought to be scheduled, so there's another survey that people can fill out to indicate their preference for session times, and I will do my best to accommodate the group. I'm not sure I'm ready to do one at 2 o'clock in the morning my time, but we'll see what happens. You can fill out you can submit the survey multiple times. So in other words, if you think that -8, -5, and 0 are appropriate times for you, you can select one, submit it, come back and select the other and submit it to indicate your preferences. The same is also true for the session requests. You can do multiple submissions, and once you do a submission, on the submission form that you will see, there's a link that allows you to look at a distribution of all of the previous responses, and I will reset the surveys periodically based upon what is indicated and what gets scheduled. Because once something gets scheduled, I need to pull all of those out of the survey because it's being taken care of, and that's sort of being figured out. So, any questions so far about?
Hey, Gene.
Yes.
This is Dave.
Yes.
No questions, but what I admire your courage in taking on that scheduling task. There was one MOOC I was a part of. Many people, and I was one team lead of like 4 or 5 people in a team, and we were scattered across, from Oklahoma, U.S. to like Kenya, and just getting up a regular meeting was a task just for those 5 or 6 people.
Right. So and that was as soon as I announced this program, I got beat up by the people from Sydney saying, I ain't going to show up at midnight or 5 a.m., so you better be doing videos. So I mean, the attempt is to be as accommodating as possible, realizing that there are participants in most of the time zones around the world. Okay. Okay, the other thing I wanted to do is I wanted to actually talk about the content for this segment. And what the intent of the segment was to provide an introduction to a systemic perspective without beating people over the head with it, so that it provides examples for an experience as opposed to presenting a lot of theory that needs to be remembered. So that it's things to watch and interact with, to be able to get a sense of the implications of interactions beyond cause and effect. And that's sort of, it's sort of the whole sequence of things in a nutshell from well, this particular segment is an exact parallel to what we did in beyond connecting the dots, modeling for meaningful results. It's a parallel because I couldn't come up with a better introduction at this point, though the advantage that this environment has over what we did in the book is this is live and this can get modified in a moment based upon the ongoing feedback. And to this point, while this program has only been in effect for a week and a half, actually, I mean, it supposedly started the first full week of May, it has been a constant set of changes to evolve the content and the operation based upon the feedback from the participants, which to me is the right kind of environment to work in, because it's then responsive to the participants as opposed to reading a dead book that was out of date before it was even published. So the idea, as I said, was to start and walk through and provide an experience that hopefully surfaced an awareness or an understanding based upon the experience itself, as opposed to simply trying to tell people certain things. And so that the bird feeder show unfolds as all these implications associated with doing something without thinking about it before you do it. And then the moose and wolves and the sustaining the forest being simulation models to actually demonstrate the implications of relationships that you simply cannot infer from looking at a static picture. The only way to get a sense of how that unfolds over time is to take 40 years or do a simulation to compress 40 years into 4 seconds so that you can get a sense of what happens over a longer period of time in a short period of time. And then some things about that I think I've come to understand about how we learn and develop our understanding based upon the way that we embrace patterns and essentially connect the dots to create meaning. And the new things that we learn are extensions of existing patterns. So that was the follow the clues and the learning stuff. And then the essence property 1, 2, and 3 to provide a sense that while the things around us appear to be a myriad of activities, there's a real simple commonality amongst them that boils down into 3 essential types of interactions, which were demonstrated in 3 simulation models that were provided in pictures, provided in structure, provided in interaction, and then an opportunity to actually play with the models themselves, and then to talk about some conceptual things at the end. So that was the whole intent of the first segment. You can let me know the extent to which you think that the section succeeded in doing what I intended to. And Dave, I turned your mic off because I thought I was getting an echo. Yeah. So when I turn it on, I hear myself over and over and over and over, and it's extremely distracting. So I guess you're going to have to type your question in if you have one. And Peter, do you have a question?
No.
Okay. All right.
Sorry.
So I mean, this ends up being a real short section if people don't have questions about the content. I'm not about to do hand puppets or shadow dances or other things. I've been up all night. It's been quite a day. As you interacted with the individual components of this segment, did you go to the discussion thread and post some thoughts, or what were your insights? Were there questions that arose about, well, this didn't make sense? Is there, why is this way? Or, I mean, it makes, well, either it's crystal clear, which is surprising, or the understanding develops based upon an interchange of questions and responses. Okay. Then I guess this ends up being a very short session, and I'll see you next week. Is that okay with you, Peter? You have some questions? Dave?
Unmuted.
Dave?
I made it through the learning as you go around the all the arrows. I made it through the learning section. I haven't gone all the way through it yet. But there was one, I can never remember how to pronounce his name or spell it, but Bernat.
Oh, Bertalanffy.
Bertalanffy, thank you. One thing really struck me with that, and just a few minutes before this started, I submitted a post with the quote that you had in there under the learning section. Let me try to find that real quick so we can refer to it. But he was talking about, I'll try and paraphrase the best I can, but it was something to the effect of there are underlying patterns that affect diverse.
I'll repeat it.
Oh, okay.
So in 1937, Bertalanffy, who was an Austrian biologist who is agreed by most of the people in the field to be the father of modern systems theory, he first proposed that there were fundamental underlying structures which operated across all branches of science. And if we learned about what those structures were and how they operated, we could transfer a lot of our learning from one discipline to another, because when we moved to a different discipline, all we had to figure out was what structures were operating and what the labels were on them. And when I first ran into this, I said, well, that's a bunch of BS. How could that possibly be true? Though after I pondered it for a while, the thought that came to mind was that, well, yeah, it's pretty obvious. If we live in one universe and all of the various disciplines of science are a fabrication of man, not nature, why wouldn't there just be one set of structures operating in the universe? So that was actually the basis for the archetypes that never actually seemed to get well instantiated until Senge wrote the fifth discipline in 1990. So there were structures that were identified, though it never was put into an organized fashion the way that that the systems archetypes were defined in the fifth discipline by Singhi, and one of the segments here, segment 8, will spend a lot of time talking about or presenting the archetypes, because the archetypes are like essence, property 1, 2, and 3, only they're well, 2 and 3 are actually archetypes, and the rest of them are constructions of 2 or more of those put together. And an archetype is a structure that happens over and over and over again and has a very distinct pattern of behavior, and which makes the archetype relatively recognizable. So if you recognize the pattern of behavior, you identify the archetype that's creating it, and there are well-defined strategies for dealing with all of the archetypes. So rather than start from scratch, you identify the pattern, connect it back to an archetype, and then understand how it's appropriate to deal with that particular situation. So you can save a lot of time and act in a way that is highly likely to produce the intended results, because the strategy has been developed and tested repeatedly to ensure that it addresses the structure that's creating that pattern of behavior. Did I go too far, Dave?
Unmuted.
No, thank you, Gene. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. From my personal experience, one of the things I had experienced before was at the time, I think I'm starting to get a better idea of it now, but at the time I was seeing patterns potentially in other departments, and I would attempt to approach tentatively maybe people in those other departments, and oftentimes I was told, you don't have any expertise in this area. Why are you, what would you possibly know about this? Right? And so, but with the underlying patterns, I realized, well, it doesn't have to do with the expertise of that area, or at least this is my perception now. There's like human relationship dynamics, and there's human technology dynamics that are applicable to whatever department you're in.
Yes. Yes.
So I just wanted to relay that. I think that's starting to get a little more concrete, and wanted to ask if that's on track with what is being said here, or
it's very much on track, though it will become crystal clear when you work through segment 8. There was a period of time when the antics that went on within organizations used to drive me nuts, until after I learned a lot more about systems and archetypes and the way that they unfolded. And it got to a point where I could sense what was developing, and I could connect it to the archetype, and I could then avoid it because I could tell where it was going. And it just, the things that happened in the organization, rather than being frustrating, became a great source of humor. How you doing, Dennis? Do you have a question?
I'm good, Gene.
Okay.
All makes sense.
Okay. So, something that should serve you well is that, Dave said that he got partway through here, and oftentimes you get partway through one of these threads and you have to leave for some reason. To be able to come back to exactly where you left off, if you're in one of these nodes and you scroll to the bottom down here, you'll see a thing called permalink. If you grab that permalink and drop it on your bookmarks bar, that is a URL, ugly as it may seem, that points specifically to this element in the model. And if you close your browser and then come back and click on this link, it will take you back to this point. Now, you got to this particular view by clicking on Web of Wonder and then going down here and selecting Focus. You could also, let me do this. If you're looking at the whole map and there's a particular part of it that you're interested in, you can just double click and it will bring that part very much into focus, and sometimes stuff's on top of each other. But if you run over, oh, come on. Why is it not doing that? Well, this is not doing what I wanted it to. All right. If you can get one of these labels, which are usually not on top of each other, why is it doing that? Oh, okay. Good. So if all right. All right. I guess if you get back to this label, then just click in the background, and then you can get back to here and do this focus.
Okay.
So select it to get back to this. I got to go figure out what I was doing wrong. Why the labels were laying on top of each other, because they're usually not. Also, this particular window that I'm working in is far smaller than I usually work in, and hopefully smaller than the one that you usually work in. I just wanted to make sure I didn't overload anyone's screens at the moment. And so part of the reason that I recommended that you go back to the and watch the new Navigating the Environment video is because it has some more information about the way that you can fold and unfold the elements in this gerbil trail. All right, so that there's a way to simply expand out from where you are to expand the focus from more than selected to multiple degrees of connectedness. If you know if that's what you're interested in at the moment. So. Right.
How did you get the link up to the
Reality?
the permalink? You got that from where? You drug that? Where did you drag that from? I didn't see the cursor.
Whichever element you have selected, at the bottom of the profile for that particular element, there's a permalink.
Oh, okay.
Now the link you're looking at up here in the URL, that link also works, though it's not a permalink. I was using the ones up here, and then I was changing the names of some of my elements, and then this link didn't work anywhere. So they came up and figured out how to create a permalink, which points to the identity of this particular element, so that permalink will work even if I change the name of the element.
Mm-hmm.
So and there's a different permalink on the bottom of every one of the profile pages. And you just click on it and drag it up and drop it.
Okay. Yeah, good. Thanks.
Okay.
There was one question I had about I think it was, I don't remember exactly where it was, but it was modeling, an online modeling course.
Oh, yes.
I think.
It was
Scott something, yeah.
It's probably here in the summary. Scott Page, model thinking course.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, is that something that probably would be better to do after this, after concluding this course, or?
Well, it depends upon the time that you have available. The course is offered in a fixed time frame. So I managed to go figure out where all his videos were, so that this link is to essentially to a list of all the videos that are in the course, so that you can just watch them at your own pace whenever you felt like it. And he presents models for all kinds of various and sundry things that are used to understand different aspects of things. It's not a course in systems models, though it's a course in models that some of them are statistical and some, just
right. Okay.
Okay. Any others? Well, one more shot, Peter. Is there anything I can talk about for you? Okay. Well, everyone, I'm going to give this a wrap. The video will be posted probably, well, as soon as YouTube finishes processing it. I'll stick it on the Web of Wonder label. You can go look at the two of them from the 6th and the 8th if you would like to. The first one from the 6th is absolute pandemonium, chaos, because I was trying to read my own questions at the time, and it was just, the one from the 8th is much better because someone was operating as they were reading the questions to me one after another. After I would answer one, they would tell me what the next question was. So I didn't waste didn't waste people's time while I was actually trying to figure out what the next question ought to be. So as you work through the sessions or segments, and you're interested in a session on the segment that you worked through, go to the web request and indicate that you're ready for a web session on whatever session you just finished. And when there are enough of them that tally up, well, I'll schedule one and we'll do it. So, okay?
Okay. All right. Thanks, Gene.
Y'all have a great time. Thank you for being here, and we'll keep at it.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.